let's go ahead and talk about the Warriors. They are currently 7-1, fresh off arguably their most impressive victory in, I would say years, probably since anything since 2021, so about 3 years now. um, are they contenders? Will they target anyone in a trade? Being 7-1, looking this good. Drew, just starting off with you and your thoughts about the Warriors, because obviously I watch the game. I watch a little bit here and there as much as I can about the Warriors because I do have a cousin that is a Warriors fan, so I try to keep up at least a little bit. Um, what do you think about them? Is this just like early season success and it's not really going to keep up? What are we thinking?
Um, what you know what I think? I think that the Warriors are gonna go as far as the Buddy Hield experiment takes them,
Mm,
essentially.
yeah,
That's kind of my belief right now. I think that it is um kind of all on Buddy Hield. I also think that there's this guy that plays for them. He's kind of a piece of shit, Draymond Green, who might be playing at
kind
an
of.
extraordinary level defensively right now.
Yeah.
So um and major things in life have to happen for me to compliment Draymond Green,
Mhm.
but it's just one of those things where it's hard to ignore the level that he's playing at right now. And when you factor in Buddy Hield playing at an all-time high,
Yeah.
you factor in what Draymond Green's doing. Um, there's like been two vast different versions of Andrew Wiggins on the Warriors team. We've seen him at the highest level of his career, and we've seen him like Cavaliers Wiggins also.
Yep.
What version of them they get from him, especially defensively when it comes to the wings in this league that he has to guard night in and night out. And then no one should be surprised that Steph is Steph. I mean, he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time at this point. So on paper, I don't know if it screams to me 7-1, 8-1, 9-1. I think they have a tough game coming up tonight, but
Yep.
man, they look really good, and the components of the team look like it could be something to look forward to this year, especially if they get active on that trade market,
Yeah, I would
which they are. We know they
Oh
are.
yeah. Yeah, they were looking at it during the offseason. They didn't pull anything major. But definitely I think they're
Well, they
going.
tried to get Lori.
Yeah. Um, I would
They tried to
say
get Markkinen.
I would say the Warriors have definitely not missed Clay. I know he's doing his thing over in Dallas right now. But I think a lot of this excellent play and the success obviously revolves around, one of those offseason acquisitions, which is obviously Buddy Hield. When Steph and Buddy share the court, they have the best net rating in the NBA. This current trend or stat has played a big part in the team's overall success this season. One of the bigger reasons on why the Warriors have stumbled in each of the early past two seasons is because their offense wasn't as deadly as it used to be. Obviously, that's a lot of Clay struggles. Steph is Steph. You can never really put a lot of the offensive stuff on him because we know what he can and does do night in and night out. But bringing in a guy like Buddy Hield and then him performing as well as he has, again, those two sharing the court, best net rating in the NBA currently right now. You can't really ask for a whole lot more when you get an offseason acquisition. And then outside of that, you also have to look at what they do defensively. You brought it up with Draymond Green. Over the last 9 years of their you know, dynasty. Is it over? Is it not over? Who fucking knows? Whenever Steph stops playing, that's when I think we can officially close the book and close the chapter because 2021 they weren't supposed to win, and they in fact did. But over the last 9 years, there's been almost one consistency with the Warriors, and it's a dominant defense. That's when they are successful. The ultimate difference maker for a team that is generally always going to be a great offensive team because of Steph. This team is always going to be. But this season, for the defensive side, they've been explosive offensively, but the defensive side, they've been able to actually rejuvenate themselves because the past 2 years, it's been super shaky. This year, they have the second best defensive rating in the league, only trailing the OKC Thunder, who have one of the best defenses up, in the first like 10 games or 2 weeks of a season of all time. I mean, it's kind of insane. So they are the second best defensive rating in the league. During the 2021-2022 NBA season, when they won their championship, they were the second best defensive team in the league. And it is very, very early, but they are already showing trends towards doing that same thing again. And the Warriors weren't supposed to do this early, be this good defensively, and Buddy wasn't supposed to be this good. So kind of combining all those things, it's It's looking pretty good for the Warriors. And then looking at the trade targets, do you have anyone really in mind that they can maybe target? I know you kind of mentioned they were going after Lori. Will they try to attack that again, or are they going to go a different route? Because I have two guys in mind. One I'll talk about. The other one I'll save for the next segment.
Yeah, I think that right now it's probably a little too early to jump into specific targets. I'm super interested to see who you have just because um, things haven't shaken out quite yet. I think that maybe Jimmy Butler might have been a target, to be honest with you, before Buddy started doing what Buddy's doing. You obviously don't want to move Buddy to the bench, and you're not going to play
Yep.
Buddy or Jimmy at the three, I don't think. Um, the Warriors are a top 10 team in everything right now, except for weirdly enough free throw percentage. They're like the worst team in the league at free throws right now, which is kind of funny. But rebounding, they're number one, scoring efficiency, field goal percentage, advanced stats, regular stats. They're just all a top 10 team right now. So it's going to be interesting to see where they're at come trade deadline and how much you want to mess with the chemistry of what they have on the court.
Yeah.
I know their record is really good. They beat the Celtics the other night, which is
Mhm.
like the first good team they've beat this year.
Right.
I don't know where you're counting the Pelicans. The Zion experiment looks like it's not really going that well this year. But I don't know how good they are because we're only 8 or 9 games into the season. But if they're trending this way towards trade deadline, I don't know how much you mess with it. But
Yeah.
I look at the roster and I'm not sure if this roster makes it deep into the playoffs. But then again, it's like Steph is Steph, and any given night, Buddy could go for 40 and he could go for three. So it's just kind of,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
are they going to come back to earth here? Is Buddy going to come back to earth? So the Warriors are going to come back to earth, or is just playing alongside the greatest shooter of all time just going to make Buddy be what his full potential has always been capable of being?
Which is better than Devin Booker, right? All right, inside joke. We'll move past
I don't know what you're
that.
talking about because there's no proof that I ever said that Buddy Hield
That's
was better
true.
than Devin Booker.
That's true. You're absolutely right. I think that regardless of who they're actually going for, the reason why they go for a trade is one of two reasons. Obviously, the whole thing starts to kind of just fall apart. Or the second reason is they're looking at the future and they're looking at maybe moving off of Jonathan Kaminga, who is a sometimes good player, sometimes average player, sometimes awful player. It's kind of really hard to place your finger exactly how well he's going to play night in, night out. He's very inconsistent about what he's going to be. So I think he's going to be part of the trade package regardless. But Jimmy Butler was one of the guys that maybe they could target depending on who they want to give up. Again, I do think that Kaminga is going to be part of that trade package. And then Jeremy Grant, I think, can also be a big trade target for them going forward. So I think one of those two guys, I think targeting a really good player like Grant, who's playing very well so far up to this point in the season, 18 points per game. He's playing on a very, very poor team, obviously. But I think a team like Portland would give up some of their capital to get a guy like Kaminga who can be the face of that organization for a little bit. But I think that's probably the only guy I'd really be stretching for is Grant. Outside of that, Butler's definitely a possibility, but it kind of just depends on what the Heat want to do at that point, which obviously we'll talk about next. What would you think about someone like that?
I think that whatever the Warriors called about LeBron last year.
Yep.
Um, so the Warriors are going to call on Giannis.
Hmm.
They're going to make that phone call, and I don't know. I don't know if the Bucks will listen. I don't know if the Bucks will pick up the phone, but I think it's safe to say that whoever the high target free agent at the, you know, could have been Kevin Durant, but now he's doing what he's doing, and that might not be something the Suns decide to do. But I
Yeah.
think any big target, any huge, I mean, it is what's the future look like for Brandon Ingram,
Hmm.
right? Does
Yeah.
there honestly, when you have Steph, he can play so many roles, and then your second leading scorer, assuming it's going to be Buddy, he can sit in the corner and shoot. You can bring almost any type of player into this team. Draymond Green's just there defensively
Hmm.
and mold it around it. It's not one of these things where you have to worry about the fit it's the chemistry you got to worry about, but the
Right.
fit, you could bring in any player and Steph can mold around him. So I don't know about Jimmy Butler. The Jeremy Grant thing is super interesting.
Yeah.
Um, he's been on my radar for the Kings for a number of years, but if there's a superstar on the move, I would expect that the Warriors are going to be in on him.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you. Um, I think, if you're all done with the Warriors, mentioning Jimmy Butler, we can move into the Heat, definitely.
And I mean, let me ask you this:
Yeah.
this is like I'm trying to think of like Kyle Kuzma. Does that make the Warriors better? Because
No.
he's going to be on the block. You know, um, with what Buddy Hield's doing, do you need to trade for Trey Young? You know what I mean? Like, is that do we take the ball out of Steph's hands that much? I already mentioned Brandon Ingram. You know, I honestly I think Giannis is the most likely to be on the move. Like if they're shit at the trade deadline and Giannis wants out,
Hey,
I mean,
especially since he was already thrown out there preseason out there, he was like, we can't do it. I might get traded this year. It's like, it's like the most awkward way to request for a trade. Is that what you're doing right now? Because that's what it feels like you're doing. Um, yeah, please God, not Kuzma. Yeah, no, Kuzma's been absolutely awful this year. He's like 32% from the field or something like that. He's been horrible. He's been ash cheeks, which,
what about Mr. Poole?
dude, hey, Jordan Poole's been a baller this year, but I don't think I don't think him and Draymond can get along for long enough to put something together. But I do think Jordan Poole's been playing a lot better this year. Watching him play against Boston, he looked pretty good. I like his shot selection. Even Draymond was talking about his shot selection. The shots he was taking looked really good. He's averaging 2.8 steals per game this year, which is fucking insane for his couple games that he's played.
So I just got a text message. I want to read it if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Um, if you effing mention the words Kyle Kuzma around my effing Warriors one more time, I will come over there and slap you.
They'd see, dude. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. No one wants
So
Kyle Kuzma.
apparently, nobody wants Kyle Kuzma.
No. If we had this conversation
Do you
preseason,
remember
maybe
hey, do you remember me showing, Dallas that picture of Kyle Kuzma in the pink shirt
in the sweater.
walking to the game,
Yeah.
and he looked at me, he's like, "Is that AI?" I'm like,
No,
"No,
that's just him.
that's that dude. That's that dude's drama."
Absolutely.
Trauma,
Yep.
not drama. Sorry, trauma.
All right. You wanna move on to the Heat?
I wanna move on to the Kings, but if we gotta go
Oh,
through the Heat to get to the Kings, then